Cape Town, South Africa, arms outstretched and eyes locked on her audience. Kolka Putama is a big stage presence for a young woman barely 5 feet tall. Her voice is velvet, but her words cut like a knife. Race, religion, womanhood and sexuality. In a society still healing the wounds left by apartheid, Putama tackles the touchiest subjects with verse that inspires some to stand and cheer, others to blush and squirm. At 26, she is widely acknowledged to be a leading light in a new generation of slam poets who are using the oral traditions of the country's indigenous cultures, its dazzling array of languages, and blunt honesty, as a path to the future. An evening of poetry might include several languages. Poets and their audiences may be black or white, and performances may be punctuated by whistles, shouts and applause. Some poets and educators argue that raising the profile of indigenous languages, and diminishing the dominance of English and Afrikaans, will bridge the gap between South Africa's haves and have-nots. I definitely consider myself the kind of poet that says the things that nobody wants to say, in many ways that can disturb the peace, Putama said. We can get real. Take her most famous poem, Water. Starting from a widely held belief that black people are afraid of large bodies of water, Putama takes aim at the complacency of those who think South Africa's divisions are a thing of the past. Our respect for water is what you have termed fear. The audacity to trade and murder us over water. Then mock us for being scared of it. The audacity to arrive by water and invade us. In Soweto, such language is met by shouts of affirmation. Among South Africa's young people, including young whites, there is a hunger to find ways to cross the racial divide. But at a 2015 TEDx event in Stellenbosch, a conservative, predominantly Afrikaans university town in the heart of Cape Wine country, the auditorium was silent, some people were turning red in front of my eyes, Putama recalled in a blog post. Organizers asked if they could release a video of the event, without her performance of Water. They didn't explain why publicly, but Putama said it was because they thought the poem was offensive. She regarded it as censorship. And she said so, very publicly. Putama, who is the winner of South Africa's first national slam poetry competition in 2014, also has been named one of Africa's top 10 poets. Her poetry has been in part an effort to find her voice, as a woman and as a black in South Africa. Silence is a thing for us black women, she said. The goal for me is to write myself into something, be it into existence. Just to talk. South Africans, in their search for self-expression, have been influenced by US slam poets. You'll find that a lot of South African poets have the accent and they've got the rhythm of African American poets, Putama said. She is uneasy about that. South Africa has 11 official languages, its own traditions and a long history of spoken word performance being used as a tool to reach social goals. The languages reflect a diversity that South Africa's white rulers long kept a lid on. Zulu and Xhosa are the most common among black South Africans, accounting for nearly 40% of the population. They are followed by Afrikaans and English, the first language of just less than a quarter of the population. Children who speak anything but English or Afrikaans are taught in their mother tongue for the first 3 years only, if they're lucky, a policy that tends to cement the existing socio-economic hierarchy. Born into a large family that is Christian in Xhosa, Putama performs mostly in English. Occasionally she will use Xhosa. She also is a primary member of a group that sings in Xhosa to accompany English verse. Poets who come from a traditional culture where praise singing or oral storytelling is prevalent are more likely to draw on that rather than outside influences, said Tony Stewart, a Cape Town poet. We have our own culture, languages and styles. South Africa really does have its own roots in slam poetry that is different from in the US, said Stewart. Poets have always used their voices and created spaces for discussions unchanged. Poets are naming specific wounds and pains left over from apartheid, she said. There's a lot around identity, where we've come from and where we're going. Stewart's work with a collective of women artists and writers called In the Word with Women Ensemble, received critical acclaim. A non-profit she co-founded, I Am Somebody, works to foster reconciliation and integration in Cape Town among young people who speak many different languages at home. Stewart, 34, also is developing a multilingual poetry education project for high school-aged students. Born to a family of mixed descent, She grew up speaking English and Afrikaans. She currently is learning Xhosa. It's that mix of languages and the cultures they represent that drew US performance poet Javier Paris to Cape Town. Paris began writing and performing slam poetry with friends while studying at Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania. A grant allowed him to travel to Australia, Brazil, Guatemala, Jamaica and South Africa to study how poetry can pull young people away from a criminal lifestyle. He said Cape Town is where he has grown the most as an artist, and he co-founded a spoken word program for young people here. There is no other city you can go to and hear 4 different languages at one performance, Paris said. There's a real effort here to preserve these different languages, as well. English is still the dominant language in the world of work in Cape Town. But there are still people who are committed to their mother tongue, despite the obstacles it brings. That's very important because poetry is about preserving origins, histories and stories, Paris said. The mission built into much of the spoken word movement is to push South Africa from its traditional hierarchy of languages to an easy multilingualism that its proponents see as the future. And to finally lay bare all the old wounds so they finally can be healed.